up, everyone? Antonio Malo, aka Evil Antonio, aka DJ Uno here. And today we're trying to bring back the vlog, doing a little bit simpler technique. I figure, you know what, fuck it, since YouTube keeps on copyrighting all my videos, I'll just go back to the fucking daily vlog. I mean, that was a good technique to begin with. That's what got me the bulk of my followers at the start of it. And even though I learned a lot from the editing, I know there are still some followers out there like my old Kenneth Peterson that still miss that daily vlog shit. So we'll go back to that for a little bit. And who knows, if I want to do my double feature madnesses, I'll probably take those and do that with it. So today, at least for this one, we're talking about Black Sun. It's another film from the Japanese New Wave, and I'm gonna put the actual facts of it in a separate little clip. Probably insert it right about. Alrighty, fuck, this is dark. Anyway, I'm just here to read the fucking basic points to you. If I can get some good lights. There we go, my shitty ass room. Alright, here we go. Black Sun, 1964 film. Directed by Koriyoshi Kurahara, written, story by Tensi Kono, written by Nobu Yamada, starring Tamio Kawachi as Akira, that's the Japanese guy I'll be referring to, and Chico Rowland as Gil, that's the black guy. All right, there's also a girl in this movie called Yuko Chishiro. Her name in the movie is Yuki, but that's the girl that's playing her. All right, and also it's edited by Akira Suzuki. Cinematography by Mitsuji Kanao. So there you go. There's some references for you. If y'all are into that kind of stuff, you can track the films that I've flogged based off of, who all's in them and shit. So there you go. So yeah. So those are the basic facts of the movie in terms of director, actors, all that shit. I'm doing this off the top though, so I might not know the actual actors' names right now because I'm gonna be looking them up later. Anyways, fuck. I love this movie. This is a really good movie, and I've been looking for a movie like this for a while because I love the Japanese New Wave, but at the same time, during that time period, there was still occupation going on by the U.S. forces. I mean, technically, we're still occupying Japan, but it's a little bit less overt now. And so what I was trying to do was find a film that was like, can I see an actual like honest interpretation of what people thought of the U.S. occupation? I mean, there are films that kind of deal with it in the offhand a little bit, like Samurai Spy deals with that a little bit, but nobody dealt with it like in an explicit manner like Black Sun does. This film is explicitly about U.S. occupation from a Japanese point of view, and I thought it was really good. I really enjoyed it. Of course, knowing my ass, I like every film I see pretty much. I'm like the Homer Simpson of YouTube critics. I'll be like, oh, I love everything. So, I hope I can provide a little bit of commentary on the back end, though, that kind of makes that worth it, though. For example, um, I like a lot of the things that they did with translation in the movie. There's a big language barrier between the two main characters, the black guy and the Japanese guy. They don't speak each other's language at all. And throughout the film, what's interesting is they never really make an attempt to learn each other's language, even though there's a perfect opportunity that they highlight in the film. There's a girl that speaks English. And at one point, they go to the pub or the tavern where she's at, do turning tricks. So they could have easily picked her up and had her translate everything, but that would have slowed the film down in a sense, having to go through an interpreter. And I think that made the ultimate power at the end. Spoiler alert. I think that made the thing at the end where he finally does learn to kind of speak the guy's language through jazz. It would have made it less powerful if there was a girl there, translating everything that he'd said. And so I definitely enjoyed that. What I also liked about the film is that even though it's made from a Japanese perspective, it talks a lot about U.S. racism at the time through the fact that the main character is black, and a lot of his struggles is having to deal with racism in the U.S. military at the time, which was very real. And in effect, it's still kind of real there. There's still racism in the military. It's just a little bit more covert now. There's still homophobia in the military, even though that shit's been supposedly kiboshed. So, I mean, shit, I remember all the fucking racist ass jokes that got told at basic training. I remember the fact that it was like 90% white dudes and 10% black dudes, and I hung out with the 10%. But that just kind of goes to the territory, I guess. The country's still pretty racist, and so that stuff bleeds over into everything else that we do. But I liked they're dealing with that. I love the spot at the end where he finally breaks down and sings that song that the guy had been trying to get him to sing. He finally breaks down and becomes the jazz singer that the Japanese guy envisioned him to be all along. There's something beautiful about it because the film throughout it has these very uncomfortable moments where they're doing these things that explicitly from the get look really, really like. I mean, like there's blackface in the movie. There's a one point where the guy literally says, "Oh, you're my slave now," and there's literal slavery in the movie, even though this is pretty much a hostage situation from the start. And it's that ending point where he finally breaks down and does the jazz. It feels more revelatory than it does submissive. It doesn't feel like he's finally submitting to the will of the Japanese man. It feels like he's breaking down and kind of giving in to his own psyche, the own part of him that he's been trying to deny. Because the military, it beats you down into being a military person. There's this old thing in the army where there's no black and white; it's all green. But that's not true, and you can see in the film it's not true. There's a definite racism there at play in the military, even though it's not explicitly talked about because it's from a Japanese perspective. You can see it there in the fact that all the white officers are pretty fucking racist. All the white, people are pretty racist in the movie. But and what's also interesting is that right after he does that, the Japanese guy goes from being this very interesting dynamic character to basically being like a short round character, a very kind of, submissive sidekick type character to the black guy. And it's like that was all he was waiting to do, to just jump in and go all in. And that's finally when he gives the guy medical attention. That's finally when he does all this other shit that should have been done like day one of the movie to prevent this motherfucker from dying. And I think honestly, in terms of climaxes, I think that was the big climax of the movie because the very end of the movie, again, spoiler alert, where the guy flies off in the balloon, that felt like more of an escape from reality to me because there's no way he's going to survive that. The balloon's going to pop at some point and he's going to drop a very far fall and die from that. Unless he falls into the water, but I mean, there's a whole bunch of things there that he's probably gonna motherfucking die. And even if he doesn't die, he's gonna be right back in square one. But in terms of the film, it felt very much like either an escape from reality or an escape by the black guy from his own like racist, from the own kind of racist situation that he's stuck in. He's literally escaping racism. He's flying above it. Basically, he's managed to find a way to escape it completely. And so I thought that was a really interesting technique that was done. The use of racism almost as if one would use color or as one would use sound in the film. It was expert level as far as how it was done because the film constantly, as I said, it constantly plays in that. And as an American watching it, it's very uncomfortable to watch some scenes in this movie, like when they're driving around town and he's got the black guy dressed as a white guy and he's dressed in blackface. And it's an ingenious disguise when you think of it. And at the same time, it's really, really uncomfortable because of how the situation's set up and what that dynamic means. Because even though he's painted white, he's still a slave. Literally, he's a slave at this point in the film. And it's not until finally when he 6 minute time limits on this phone vlog shit. So fuck that. But hey, like I said, it beats Google system, so fuck Google. But yeah, it's I'm gonna have a cigarette. Fuck the time limit, fuck all that shit, man. Get a grip. But yeah, I mean, Most Japanese films, they feel like they have to play in violence or they have to play in this and that. And while I do enjoy violence in film, I don't feel like Quentin Tarantino that it's a necessary part of it. I think there are interesting things you can do. Um, I think to quote comedians best when they say, oh, I could do. Well, and rappers have the same thing where it's like, oh, I could cuss in my raps, but there's a certain je ne sais quoi, there's a certain power to being able to do an entire song without cussing or to be able to do an entire set without having to curse. I feel it's the same thing with violence. If you're doing a movie, you can do violence, but there's a certain power as a filmmaker to being able to do the whole thing with no violence and still have a compelling, interesting movie. And I feel by substituting the stereotypical Japanese violence that you see in, like, say, Tokyo Drifter, which is still an amazing film, by the way. I'm not knocking Tokyo Drifter, but to forego all those options, to forego all those options in favor of dealing with the very touchy issue of racism, and to do it, like I said, in such a masterful way as they do, even though, like I said, it might not always connect on an American level. And I think as an American watching this, you might honestly need to watch the film two or three times to really get past how it plays with racism, because there are really some scenes in here that, like I said, that they're really kind of they're just really awkward, and they really make your skin crawl a little bit, because it's like, ooh, I know this is a good scene, but I don't feel comfortable admitting that it's a good scene because of how racist the scene is on the front. And there are certain things about it that are explicitly racist, but the film's playing in racism. It's using racism like one would use violence in a film. And in that sense, I don't think the film itself is racism. I think it's an expert level class on how to use racism in film to make your point. You know, I've always loved films that try to go that really hard route and talk about racism, whether it's White Dog or whether it's, Goodbye Uncle Tom, or whether it's one of those films that really try to grapple with it and don't just try to play on the margins of racism. Because it's easy to play on the margins of it, like the Hairspray remake, and say, oh, we're going to talk about racism. Shut up. We're going to talk about racism, but we're never going to say the N word, or we're never going to do this or that. This film doesn't really do that. Even though I don't think that N word gets said, it deals in explicit racist tropes that if you're an American watching it, you'll recognize and you'll go, ooh. But I think that ooh is very necessary here, because they're talking about some very important stuff here. And also, just to kind of bury that point and move on to the next thing, I liked how the film talked about occupation. It's not forefront in the film, but you can definitely feel that there is this constant thing of, like, how are the Japanese people dealing with being an occupied people? Because this is still in, like, the early 60s or whenever the fuck this was made. So you're still having this thing of occupation in the foreground. And honestly, I'd say that the dynamic between the black guy and the Japanese guy as the film progresses actually reflects the dynamic between the US and the Japanese as countries. As time went on from World War II, you see it the first time. Neither of them really want to be there. Neither of them really want to deal with each other. They both just want to go back home, but they can't, because there's a greater mission at play here, which is making sure the Japanese don't go fucking crazy again. Or however you want to look at it from the Japanese side. It's kind of hard to look at it when you're being occupied. But as the film goes on, you see that not through guns or anything, but through culture, through jazz, through, baseball, even though baseball is at play here, through these various American culturalisms that the Japanese grow to love and grow to use and make their own, like jazz, especially in the Japanese New Wave, they grow to respect each other as countries, as independent people, And the Americans do to an extent as well. We love a lot of Japanese shit, especially nowadays. I mean, this wasn't so much a play back in the 60s, but I can tell you growing up, fucking everybody was otakus. Everybody was loving the animes. Everybody was loving the Japanese shit. That shit was the bomb. And so I feel that that's also an excellent play in the movie thematically, is watching how the relationship develops and how they finally grow to respect each other and and care for each other as people, not as the stereotypes that they imagine each other to be. All right. And now I'm almost out of memory space here, so that's all I'm going to do from the deck. I might put a little finisher up there from up front, and I still got another finisher. I still got the opening to record too. So let me give another finger snap just to sync everything up, and that'll be the end out here. All right, so I have one more thing that I wanted to talk about before I go ahead and close this out. Let me go ahead and get in front of the fucking thing so I can actually see me better. Whoop! Here we go. So anyway, final thing that I wanted to talk about. There is a really nice use as far as cinematography goes of like disorienting shots where he'll shoot something from really up high and he'll spin the camera as he's shooting it. At the very front of the movie, you'll notice this. He shoots a big landscape shot of the city and he's looking down at it as these cars are passing and the character is walking around a corner. And as they're doing that, he's spinning the camera in the opposite direction. And it creates a really interesting disorienting effect that I'm going to definitely steal one day. They do it throughout the movie in different ways, but that was just something I really wanted to talk about. Really nice use of camera work, and props to Mitsuji Kanao for doing that. He really knocks that shit out the park with that technique. So I haven't seen it before done in a movie, and so if you want to see it, watch this movie. It's a really interesting technique that they did. So there you go. Final rating for this film, I give it 4 out of 5. It's good. I mean, the ratings don't mean shit anyway. I like everything that I see, so there you go. Anyway, if you like this, I have a little fucking thing right here, PayPal page. Check it out. PayPal.me/evilantonio. You can give me a tip. Some cash, money. Since I'm not going to be getting YouTube advertisements, I figured we'll just do that. You can give me a tip if you like the review. And then up here, when I finally get more videos, I'll put an annotation for a video there that you can see. But I ain't got that up yet. So there you go. Anyways, y'all have a good day. I will see you tomorrow. This is Evil Antonio, a.k.a. DJ Uno, a.k.a. Antonio Malo, signing out.